Just yesterday, a former drug enforcement agent said that from 1986 until he retired in 1992, he documented evidence that the CIA participated in cocaine distribution to Los Angeles gangs.
The CIA and the DEA knew that the Contra pilots were involved in narcotics trafficking.
Congresswoman Maxine represents that Los Angeles district where the alleged drug distribution was centered. She joins us from Los Angeles this morning. And in Washington, reporter Gary Webb of the San Jose Mercury. His reporting first detailed those charges. Thank you both for joining us this morning.
You're welcome.
Representative Waters, the allegations of drug running reached to the DEA, the CIA, the State Department, the White House. These are incredibly serious allegations. Do you believe them to be true?
I find Gary Webb's work very compelling. He names names, he's describes situations, there's documentation, so much so that I've spent the last couple of weeks just making sure we get some investigations going.
Gary, your series in the San Jose Mercury includes some interviews with drug traffickers, some informants. How reliable were your sources for this piece?
Well, the central source for it is now a DEA informant. I mean, he testified to a lot of this stuff under oath on the witness stand down in San Diego in March. And last Friday, the U.S. government stood up in court and said the man's believable. They believe everything he says. And
so what happens from at this point, Maxine Waters?
Well, you know, we've gotten two investigations going. The Intelligence Committee of the House of Representatives will start an investigation. The Inspector General of the CIA's office, in cooperation with the Inspector General from the Justice Department, have started an investigation. So we're off to a good beginning, at least getting our foot in the door. Of course, there's a lot more work to do, a lot more follow-up to do. We're organizing in the communities, helping them to understand what's taken place, disseminating information, reproducing the San Jose Mercury Webb investigation, and we believe that a combination of all of these efforts may help us to realize and reap information that will tell us who knew what and when.
But these allegations have been investigated before. Janet Reno says the Justice Department will open the investigation again. They'll look into it, but before they've looked into it and found nothing, John Deutsch with the CIA said the same thing.
There has never been an investigation about drug trafficking by CIA operatives that allowed tons of cocaine turned into crack to go into our inner cities, starting with Los Angeles, divided, spread out among the gangs for sale, for profit, that went to the Contras. That kind of investigation has not been done by anybody.
Gary, do you believe
Gary Webb?
Gary, do you believe that Janet Reno's investigation and John Deutsch's investigation will be enough to get to the heart of this matter?
I'm not sure. I don't think it'll be enough to satisfy a lot of Americans that you know, two federal agencies that played some kind of role in this thing are going to be able to investigate themselves and do it fairly. I think what's needed is an outside panel or an outside commission to come in and look at these documents and see exactly what's there.
This morning you're going to talk to members of Congress, Gary. What do you intend to tell them?
Well, I really don't know. I mean, I've been asked to come brief them on this story, and I presume I'm going to tell them exactly what we found, which is the same thing anybody else in the world can see if they want to. They can go to our website at www.sjmercury.com/drugs and look up the whole series for themselves. We've got all the DEA undercover tapes, we've got the FBI reports, we've got the court records, and they're all posted for people to see.
Congresswoman Waters, one of the things that Dick Gregory and some other civil rights activists have asked for is a bill called the Records Act, which would declassify all documents related to the CIA's alleged involvements in these cocaine shipments. Do you feel like that is going to pass?
Well, I don't know. There's been no legislation to that effect yet. Like I said, we've gotten started, we've opened the door, we've got a long way to go, and we have a lot of alternatives. Those of us who are committed to finding out what took place may decide at a later date to do any number of things. But for now, we've opened the door, we've gotten started. Some people thought we'd never get started with these kinds of investigations, but let's see what happens here.
Gary, you were criticized initially. Do you feel like the public is ready for some answers on this?
I think the public's always ready for answers on this. I mean, the central thing of this series that we tried to show, and it wasn't particularly that the CIA knew about it, it was how crack came to be such a problem in America. That's what our series is about, and this is what we found, that it was connected to this Nicaraguan cocaine pipeline.
Okay, great. Gary Webb, Maxine Waters, thank you for joining us this morning.
You're certainly welcome.
Good afternoon. I asked you folks to come in today so we could attempt to clarify some of the information that's floating around relative to an allegation that somehow Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department either knew about an alleged CIA involvement in the distribution of cocaine in this community, or that after the fact we've been involved in some sort of cover-up. All of this seemed to originate with a document that Attorney Harlan Braun submitted in federal court during the trial of former Deputy Daniel Garner, who was among a number of deputies who were prosecuted for skimming money from drug seizures during their investigative effort. And this document became apparently the centerpiece for a series of stories that have been reported in the San Jose Mercury News. And I think there have been just some slight stretching of the facts in some of these reports. For example, I have a copy here from the Mercury News that says, according to a sworn statement police filed to obtain a search warrant, Lister and others were dealing drugs and laundering money on behalf of a CAI-sponsored guerrilla army in Nicaragua. He says that according to our sworn statement, this is what was presented to obtain the search warrant. In reality, in the search warrant affidavit, we did in fact say that we had information that indicated that this organization, headed by a man by the name of Blandone, and I made this statement at the media open house just 2 weeks ago here in this very room, that they were selling large quantities of cocaine in the Los Angeles area, that the money was being transferred to a Florida bank where it was laundered, and then finding its way down to Central America in support of the Contra effort against the Nicaraguan government. Never at any time do we try to conceal that fact, but nothing that we've obtained then or now would indicate any knowledge of involvement by the CIA. And let me say that if the CIA or any other agency of the federal government is or was in fact involved in the distribution of illicit drugs in this community or any community, then they should be dealt with in the same manner that anyone who would stoop so low as to distribute that poison throughout our community. So certainly we have no interest in protecting them. Secondly, there seemed to be a great deal of concern because the Sheriff's Department allegedly did not pursue this possibility when one of the subjects in the raids that day indicated that he was working with the CIA. Be advised that both the Drug Enforcement Administration and the Federal Bureau of Investigation were involved in these series of raids. In fact, our information relative to the Contra involvement, most of that came from the FBI and the DEA from their informants who were providing information about this same group, the Blandone group. There's also been an allegation made that evidence disappeared from the evidence locker in the Sheriff's Department. As was reported, CIA agents swooped down on the Sheriff's Department and removed this stuff from the evidence locker. Every piece of evidence seized in that raid that was recorded in the original reports, and was all recorded, was properly transported to the evidence locker, was properly recorded in the evidence ledger. The paper trail as to what happened to each piece of evidence is absolutely accurate and complete. The items that, particularly in one of the reports here, information that Mr. Webb, the reporter for the Mercury News, reported that he received from one of the deputies who was involved, including some alleged training films and military photos. Here it is. 3 monitors, 1 video camera, 1 box of training manuals, 3 card files, 5 large checkbooks, 1 envelope containing military training films, 1 envelope containing mail, pay, and owes financial information, 1 envelope containing miscellaneous papers for Lester and Moreno. Those were 2 of the subjects, and 1 box with miscellaneous ammunition. Every one of those items were transported to the sheriff's evidence locker. All of those items were ultimately transferred to the department's property custodian in February of 1987, and in December of 1987 they were disposed of according to department policy and state law. Those items that were usable, such as the monitors and the camera and the ammunition, those things were transferred to departmental use, as we do with much unclaimed evidence. Those evidence that had no value were destroyed by the property custodian out at the property warehouse, as they do with all unclaimed property. Most of the property was returned to the attorneys of the subjects in this case because there were no criminal filings. The district attorney rejected the filing against the Blandones because of the small amount of drugs that were found. The federal people then took the case to the U.S. attorney. They refused to file the case because of the small amount of drugs that were found. A message was sent from a local office here at the FBI to the headquarters of the FBI in Washington, D.C., outlining the facts of the case, and they came to the conclusion that no further investigation was warranted. One of the FBI agents, because of the statements made by one of the subjects, sent all of the names of the people involved in this investigation back to the CIA, we're told, and the response came back that one person was known to them as a cocaine dealer. The others are unknown to that agency. So I guess the sum and substance of what I'm saying is that in spite of, first of all, the information that we had going in, that this organization might be involved in an operation supplying funds for the Contras, well aware of what was going on in Washington, the debate over funding for the Contras and everything else, did not in any way dissuade us from going ahead with the investigation and pursuing the investigation as we would any other narcotics investigation. There was great disappointment when, based upon the allegation of the large quantity of drugs that these people were dealing, that no large quantity of drugs or large sums of money were recovered. In a later time, the original informant indicated that they believed that somehow these people became aware of the surveillance which had been going on for some time, either by us or by the federal agents, and that caused them to make sure that they did not have anything when the raids, which they expected would probably occur because of their surveillance, took place. So with that, I'll throw it out to any questions that you may have.
Why is it that your department in recent months has said that there were no records of this raid whatsoever?
To whom?
To the Mercury News.
Well, we didn't. The Mercury News called and asked for one specific piece of paper. That was in November, a copy of the affidavit and search warrant, and we were unable to locate that.
What about on March 5th? I understand that Gary Webb was told that there were no records of it whatsoever.
Well, you know, Maxine Waters came to the Record Bureau last week and asked for copies of the reports involved in this case. She had a file number, and she was given the report, 70 pages worth. So there's been no effort to conceal anything from anybody.
Are there concerns that during the course of this investigation, I mean, there have been suggestions that people affiliated with the federal government might have tipped off these targets?
I have no idea who might have tipped off the targets.
Well, but that charge was contained in Harlan Braun's thing that was filed in court.
Well, remember, Harlan Braun was defending a group of individuals who were charged with some very significant crimes, who ultimately all went to federal prison for their actions of stealing large quantities of money.
But you also had deputies talking about specifically this guy saying, you know, coming to the door saying, I know why you're here, but you're not supposed to be here, and I'm with the CIA, I have to make a phone call. Was there any investigation into that?
That was in the report.
Mm-hmm.
It was in the report. You know, what the individual, you're talking about this Ronald Lister.
Yeah.
And what he said to the deputies that, you know, my contacts are going to be angry, or you're not supposed to be here,
Right.
Didn't dissuade the deputies at all. They went on with what they were supposed to do. So yeah, he said that, and they reported that in their report.
But was
Was
there
that
any
confirmed,
investigation?
Sheriff, that he was in fact working for the CIA or had ties with them?
We would have no way of confirming that or not confirming that.
Well, calling the CIA.
Yeah. Well, you think they'd tell us?
At least the attempt.
I told you, the FBI sent the list of all the people involved in this case
Well,
to
the
the
one-
CIA. And they came back and said that one was a cocaine dealer, that's all they knew.
And which one was that?
I don't know which one that was.
Cocaine
And what-
dealer
Whichever
working
one
for
it
the
was.
CIA, or just a
Pardon?
cocaine dealer working for the CIA, or?
Well, all they said, they knew he was a cocaine dealer.
If we can go back to the evidence, so just to clarify, you've had some of the items that were seized during the raids in October of '86 were either destroyed and or items as the
They-
cameras and so forth.
They're either returned to the owner or returned to their attorney with an authorization, as we do in cases where there is no prosecution, we don't use for evidence. Those things that were not claimed were ultimately transferred to the property custodian. And those items which were usable by the department, such as TV monitors and a camera and ammunition, which went to the crime lab for their firearms testing, those things were retained by the department. Those things that have no value were destroyed by the evidence people.
So some of
That's
that-
routine.
So, but did any of those materials wind up being taken by the FBI, the CIA, or any other federal
Nothing.
agencies?
Nothing. The federal agencies made copies of the papers in our possession. DEA, FBI, and IRS, because there were the possibility of some tax liabilities, as indicated by some of the financial records. So they Xerox copies of what they wanted, but not one item was given to or taken by anybody outside of the evidence in our possession, other than the owner of the property or their attorneys with an authorization, or what was transferred to the property custodian for disposal.
And the Sheriff's Department no longer has any such evidence from those raids?
We have no evidence, other than the monitors may still be around, the camera may still be around, but there'd be no the stuff that was destroyed, papers or whatever.
What are the rules governing the disposal of evidence? Is there a standard rule?
Yes, after 6 months, if property is not claimed and not returned to the owner, it's either sold at auction, retained by the department. If it's useful to another governmental agency, it may be given to them. And those things that have no value are destroyed. If it's contraband, then they're certainly destroyed, such as narcotics.
Sure.
6 months of what? 6 months of the arrest, 6 months of the trial?
6 months from the completion of the case if there's a prosecution, or 6 months from the time of seizure if there is no prosecution.
Sheriff, Representative Waters said that it was very difficult for her to get this material.
Yeah, she had asked.
Well, she says as she was trying to get this material, what she was telling us is that somebody was trying to prevent her from being able to get copies and walk out of the clerk's office.
That's absolute nonsense. She walked, somebody called that day and said they were doing a research project on a man by the name of Landone. And the Record Bureau says, well, you know, you have to have something more than that before, but if you come down here with information, we could check our files. This person showed up with Maxine Waters later that afternoon. She had file numbers, she had names, and the information was, you know, they had to go into the microfiche to get it because this case is 10 years old. It wasn't readily available, and made copies of it and was given to her.
Sheriff, is it often that deputies come in contact with CIA agents when they're conducting investigations or narcotics investigations?
We don't know we came in contact with CIA agents then.
Are you investigating with
People
you?
usually claim that they're CIA agents. Has anything like this ever happened before?
I don't, people claim all sorts of things, but they're irrelevant. What is the relevance of somebody claiming they're a CIA agent if it didn't dissuade our people from continuing their investigation?
Well, at one point, this gentleman was a suspect, so he said he was a CIA agent, and he wasn't arrested. I mean, could any suspect just say, hey, I'm a CIA agent, and walk away?
They weren't arrested because they didn't find anything on which to arrest him.
They did find drugs in Blandone's home.
What?
Okay,
No, they didn't. In
As what?
Blandone's home, yeah, they
Right.
arrested Blandone.
but he wasn't charged.
Well, I told you, the DA said the amount was not large enough, and this U.S. attorney advised the federal investigators it was not large enough to charge.
Do you have copies of the release, whatever report is written up, that sort of tracks the course of property?
We have,
Based on Lister's property? On the stuff that-
absolutely,
You do?
absolutely.
Can
It
we have a
goes-
copy?
It's in the report, it's in the evidence log at the Narcotics Bureau.
According to
And
the
it goes,
Mercury,
and it goes
there's-
from that to the property custodian. The paper trail is complete.
Well, according to the Mercury, it's complete for the other locations, but not for Lister's house.
It's complete for listers. You know,
On the
how does Mercury know? They didn't see anything. They didn't check anything.
Well, I think
How do they know? All he knows is what, you know, it gets second, third, or fourth hand from one deputy who told another deputy who told another deputy.
No,
But I can tell you that, you know, I am encouraging, you know, that there be either a full congressional hearing or some special commission to resolve this thing once and for all. And I am not going to release any additional information and retain that, and so that they can subpoena or they can have the whole, the entire record.
But the release,
Sure.
the release reports would be part of the public record, so you should be able to release a copy of that.
The release reports?
Yeah, on what happened to the property from Lister's house.
It's in a ledger. It's in a big ledger. Where's the ledger from Lister? Ron Lister. There's
From the
all his
Lagar-
property.
From the Lagardo address?
From the Lombardo address. Everything's listed.
But what I'm asking about is the report that documents what happened to it after it was seized. You know, when it was, if, as you say, released to attorneys or...
Well, it's all recorded in here.
Mm-hmm.
And then what wasn't released to the attorneys went to the property custodian. And their records show the disposition of that.
So you're saying that
This is a legal document. This is a paper trail that's, you know, done with all evidence.
So you're saying categorically the CIA did not come to the Sheriff's
I'm
Department
saying
and
it
did not...
categorically, absolutely.
that.
Sheriff, can you tell us why Blandon and the other mister weren't charged with conspiracy based, if nothing else, on the affidavit by your deputy, which allowed the judge to cite it? Why weren't they charged with conspiracy, since there are so many people in prison today? Well, that's based on conviction of that charge?
Our affidavit was based on statements of reliable informants, people who have given us information in the past that have proven to be valid. And on that basis, the judge issued a search warrant for those locations. Did not issue any arrest warrants because all we had was information. And the search warrants were issued for 13 locations, and including one location was Lister's, and then at the time of that, the information.
No evidence to support the affidavit.
We found no evidence to support the affidavit, no evidence of, that showed this group were all even related.
What did you make of that?
Huh?
What did you make of that? You had all this information.
What do we make of it?
Yeah, that there was no drugs found or anything else after that search.
What we suspected was that somehow they knew they were the subject of an investigation. The informant indicated later that they observed some of the surveillance activity that was taking place on some of the locations, and that caused them to dispose of whatever they had.
Sure. So rather than being tipped off, they
not
might
unusual.
rather than being tipped off, they might have seen the surveillance vehicles.
That's what the informant said.
Sheriff
I have no way of knowing.
Going back to this ledger, given that it is public record and that you say that this contains the evidence that the Mercury was looking for,
Right.
can we get copies of it?
The what?
Of the ledger?
No, I'm not going to distribute any more copies of anything. Because
Why?
Because this thing is getting all distorted and blown out of proportion, and
But
all
isn't the
this
way to stop that from happening
all
to
this
have...
inaccurate information.
But-
I'm telling you what happened to the.
Right, but if you're telling us, and if you have the documentation, and if it is public record, why can't you share that?
I'm telling you what happened to the. I'm going to retain all of the information related to this case.
Is it not public
Until
record?
somebody, if you want to challenge under public record, you can.
But this is going to make people think that you may be covering up something.
Well, the reason I'm holding this, what I keep getting questions on is, so you've got that written down. How do we know it's factual? How do we know this? Everybody keeps raising issues and questioning the credibility of what we're saying. What I'm telling you is that this case was handled no differently than any other case, and there's a lot of misinformation, a lot of literary license. I see now the statements are, we never alleged that there was any CIA involvement. That was the latest statement I heard from the Mercury News. What are you shaking your head no?
I believe the statement was clarification in terms of connection.
Oh, clarification, I see.
For sure.
Not to clarify what the series said, but to clarify how some people have interpreted it, by the way.
I just read you the misstatement right out of the Mercury News about what the affidavit said, when it's not what the affidavit said. I just read that to you. And a copy of the affidavit was available on the internet. Right?
That we posted.
Right.
Sure.
Since you were saying that,
Are you saying that to your knowledge, the CIA was not running drugs into Los Angeles to get money to support the country?
I don't know if they were or not. I can't make that statement. All I'm saying is we had no knowledge that they were. And there's nothing in our investigation that indicates that they were. And I'm saying that if they were, then whoever's responsible should be dealt with in a manner in which any major drug dealer, a major drug dealing organization should be dealt with. I think that it's a crime second only to murder when you consider what happens to not only the people who use this poison, but what happens to their families, what it does to a community, what it does to all of our society. So no way in the world would I ever condone or cover up, whether it's the CIA or anybody else, that they're involved in the distribution of illicit drugs.
Sheriff, what is the protocol? You mentioned in going through the warrant that in fact the FBI and the DEA was also involved in an investigation and so forth. But where you have a situation that clearly within the search warrant affidavit states that you have drug money that was going to the Contras, who of course everybody at that time knew were backed by the CIA. My question is, are there any checks and balances so that, did you figure that the FBI and the DEA would handle that? Would the Sheriff's Department at least launch some sort of investigation or make sure that that end of it would be investigated, or was that just let go?
Well, what is the responsibility to investigate the CIA? Or, I mean, our responsibility was to investigate this drug case, and we did that.
Well, my question is, if you come across what could appear to be alleged wrongdoing, especially if it could be alleged by federal government and or its entities or operatives, and I'm just asking for protocol here, is there something where you would step in and have a separate investigation? Would you refer that to some sort of agency, the Justice Department, whomever?
Justice Department was involved in the investigation. This allegation was made in federal court. It was made before a federal judge in front of the U.S. Attorney. I mean, so who is it that we're supposed to discuss this with?
Well, that's what I'm asking. So as far as the LA County Sheriff's Department is concerned, it's not your case.
That's
is that right?
We did, I think, an appropriate investigation. We stated what we knew. In fact, everything that we knew was in the affidavit. Everything that was learned was in the report following the action. So there was nothing that was concealed in any way from anybody.
Well, Sheriff, since it's unanswered questions, you support Senator Feinstein's call today for her colleagues to conduct an investigation. Specifically, she wants the Judiciary Intelligence Committees to take up the issue during the next Congress. Would you be willing to go back and testify?
Absolutely.
And give them the information?
I don't know who the appropriate committee is, but whoever it is, I encourage them to do it, because this is something that, you know, it is going to be a festering issue, not only in this community, but I think, you know, throughout the country. And it's something that has to be addressed by, you know, proper authorities. And to be honest with you, I don't think this is something that the media can clarify or ever get to the bottom of. I think it's going to take testimony under oath, and that's the way it needs to be pursued.
Sheriff, you were saying that although this is handled like any other drug case, because of the agencies involved and the allegations that were raised, even in the initial affidavit, were you alerted to this once the raids were made, and the fact that there were names in the CIA that were listed as coming from those places? Were you specifically notified at all
of what?
at the time of this particular case?
Notified of what?
That there were allegations were being made in this case.
Lister, that was in the report.
Well, I know, but were you specifically then, you were made aware back when this was originally done, this the warrants issued, the returns made, the FBI being brought in? Did you take a special interest in this case because of what the allegations were?
No. I mean, when the information we knew that these people might be funneling money to the Contras was of interest, absolutely. But the fact that the FBI and the DEA were working with our people, this is not an unusual occurrence. In fact, many such investigations that go on involve, you know, multi-agency.
Well, in the investigation, that's true, but in the allegation that you have another governmental agency that's supposedly involved in the ring itself.
One person out of the 13 locations said that, you know, the CIA is not going to like this.
Sir, do you
that was the extent of it.
deputies ever report to you that they come in contact with people who identify themselves as CIA agents when they're conducting investigations?
No, you know, they don't come to me directly, no.
Do they write it in reports?
It's in the report, yeah.
Is it frequent that this happens?
I can't tell you how frequent. We've had people who claim all sorts of things, but the fact that an individual said the CIA is not going to like this, you know, people say things to try and impress you, to try to make you believe how important they are and so forth, but the key is that it did not dissuade the deputies from doing their job.
But he even went far enough to name his contact in Virginia. And according to the report that you referred to, that name was in there. You mean, if somebody comes to you and say anyone is dealing drugs in your jurisdiction,
Warren,
you don't check it out?
Warren, I just told you that the FBI sent a memo back to their headquarters. The FBI contacted the CIA, and what more were our deputies supposed to do?
Can you tell us how much cocaine was confiscated in connection with Blandone?
I think less than an ounce, I think. It was a very small amount. It was a very small amount.
Less than an ounce?
I think so.
And
I
with
think there was
Mr.
a
Lister?
small amount of marijuana, about maybe a gram or a couple of grams of marijuana in Lister's house.
And neither Lister nor Blandone was prosecuted?
No, Blandone and his wife were arrested.
But
They were not
prosecuted?
prosecuted.
At neither local nor federal levels?
That's correct.
And what was the reason for that again?
They said the amount was insufficient to initiate a prosecution. That's a rejection from both the DA and the U.S. Attorney.
If I might beg your indulgence, Congresswoman Waters is here. May I ask her to step forward?
Sure.
To ask her a similar question? Congresswoman, may we have you to the podium if you don't mind?
This is Sheriff Deputy. Sheriff Block's press conference, he does not mind.
He indicated it would be fine.
What?
Would that be all right?
Sure.
It's only with his permission, is that okay?
Sure.
All right, thank you.
Hi.
I'm just curious about your reaction to the fact that neither Lister nor Blandone was prosecuted because so little, a quantity of drugs supposedly confiscated was so small.
Cocaine.
Well, it was not marijuana, it was cocaine that was found. Even the-
Blandone's house.
Well, Blandone even said the cocaine is mine, as it is in the police report. And I'm not sure what he's referring to, whether he's referring to the small amounts or even more. But they also had some crack cocaine. A few rocks were found, but in addition to that, you had the scales. Some sophisticated scale that starts with an H that's only used by drug dealers to weigh. What is the name of the scale? Somebody must know that. I beg your pardon?
Triple beam.
No, it's Helphus.
Hohas.
I beg your pardon?
Hohas.
Yes, I think that's it. The scales were found, and you also found, in addition to the scales, some cutting agents or something like that. It's in the report.
But my question is, do you believe there should have been a prosecution?
Well, as I understand it, there are a lot of arrests and prosecutions that are made without having any of the drugs in possession, but rather conspiracy. As a matter of fact, in talking with a lot of the people on the street down in South Central Los Angeles, they tell me many of the convictions have been done on conspiracy to sell cocaine, but you did have people who had been under investigation by the DEA and others for over 3 years. They did find scales, and they did find small amounts of cocaine. And so it is, I would consider that unusual that there would be no attempted prosecution, particularly with all of the information of the informants that was available. I think by now in that report, you will see maybe 5 informants who have very strong information. They've been under surveillance now for a long time. So I'm not, I'm not in law enforcement, but it does seem strange.
You produced a chart this morning, at least one was handed out, where there was the results of an ounce of cocaine producing some 300 rocks.
Yes.
Is that true?
Well, yes, and probably some of the deputies here probably know this stuff better than most of us, given the work that they have to do. But yes, it is true that out of an ounce, you could get 300 rocks, and you know, as we know, Blandone, just at that one location, was dealing about 10 kilos per week, in addition to Mr. Argelis, who's mentioned in that report, who was dealing about 20 kilos per week. So you're talking about a lot of cocaine.
Congresswoman, what do you have to say to Sherman Block saying that he will not release any additional information regarding the case unless there's a congressional hearing or released to someone with subpoena?
Oh, that's his decision.
Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Did you say you had trouble getting those reports?
Yes, I did. I had trouble.
What kind of trouble did you have?
As I described to the press this morning, after entering the record section, a young lady was rather cooperative at first. We went to her office. She said that a lot of people had been inquiring. She had them on her desk. She was then visited by the captain of the station, and then the two of them said they had to excuse themselves. They left, and they stayed away so long, I went to see about them. I went over by his office, and I asked her to let me have the reports, to see the reports. He was still checking. I kind of suspected he was checking with you or somebody downtown. And he came out and he said that he could not let me have the reports. By this time, I had gotten the reports out of her hand, and I had given them to one of my assistants, who walked away with the reports, and they ran and caught him and had him come back. And they said they could not give them to me for a number of reasons, that they were operating under administrative law, that somehow if there was an investigation in process, they could not release them to anybody else except, I think they said, the people involved in investigation. Then they said, secondly, that they may have the names of informants in the material that they would want to protect, and I told them that that should be redacted, that it was public information, they could redact that and still give them out. And so I sat while he waited for someone to bring him information from one of the legal books, which they did not find. And I waited, and I told him to look through to see if any informants' names was in the material, because I had not seen any. And he looked through, and I said that, you know, I had to have the material. And finally, he gave them to me after, but he didn't want to. He was nice.
I mean, if he didn't want to, he wouldn't have.
Well, I think what I suspected was that he was told from your people from downtown that try not to give them to me, but if I insisted, they had to give them to me.
There's no such thing, try not to, but if you insist to give it. I mean, he may have checked.
He tried not to give them to me.
He may have checked to see if it was still an active investigation, which would preclude you from
Oh, I think everybody
getting the
knows that
report.
this was been a long time ago.
But-
He didn't say that was the reason.
Well, but with all the publicity for all the people in the
Yeah.
Record Bureau, and all this thing was very,
Sheriff,
very
do you
active.
consider what she went through difficulty in getting them,
No,
Congresswoman?
I don't. Doesn't, you know, she's not entitled to any more than anybody else.
Oh, no, and I was going.
So what I'm saying is the fact that she's a congresswoman was not the relevant issue.
But it's public information,
Yeah.
and it should be available to anybody
Congresswoman,
who's seeking the
And you
information.
got it.
Well, I got him after difficulty, but that's okay.
How long were you there?
About 2 hours.
2 hours?
Yeah,
in,
that's okay, that's right.
in the information that you got, though, while there were release reports on the other location,
Identified and listed there that I did not get the corresponding report on what happened to that evidence. It was not released to anybody. Where is it?
Well, that evidence went to the, as I indicated, it was in the evidence locker. It was not released because what was not claimed went to the property custodian, and then ultimately in December of that year, or December of 1987, after a little more than a year, it was disposed of in several ways. That which had no value was destroyed. That which had a value, such as the monitors, the camera, the ammunition, whatever else was of value was put to use.
Well, what's strange about that is there were 2 locations that belonged to Mr. Lister. One of the locations you had evidence that was released to his attorney. So I know he had an attorney that was signing for the release of information. One location that did not include the documents that had been copied by Mr. Garner was released to that attorney. The other location, no
It
release.
was not in the SUP because it wasn't released to anybody.
Well, I guess that's the question.
That's it.
Why
The
wasn't that
information-
information, why is the information that is the same information that was copied by Mr. Garner, that was sealed by the courts, the information by which the judge placed a gag order on Holland Braun, the attorney, why is that information missing? Why was it not released to his attorney? The attorney got the other information, other evidence, and why was this particular information that was copied by Mr. Garner all of a sudden not released to anybody and it's sealed by the court? I mean, not that you should know all of these answers, but these are the kinds of questions that come to mind.
But in a supplemental report
Yes.
of a case, as material is released to the owner, to an attorney,
Yes.
a supplemental report is written and made part of the file. This evidence remained in the sheriff's narcotics evidence locker until it was transferred to the property custodian at the property warehouse, and that's recorded in the ledger, and then the property custodian has their reports as to, and they make disposition of the material.
So do they have the disposition of that evidence that was, may I see it, please?
The monitor went to the department, monitor went to the department, monitor went to the department, camera went to the department, miscellaneous paper, destroyed, no value. Miscellaneous papers, destroyed, no value. Training films, destroyed, no value.
The training films that are the training films of the FDN in
I have
Nicaragua.
no idea what they are. It
They're-
says training film.
They're Army training films of,
Well, they were films that were technical films, I understand.
where the pay-o sheets of documents of dope sales and,
Well, if they were in this papers, then they were destroyed as no value. License plates, miscellaneous papers, miscellaneous ammo, went to the crime lab. So this was in December 22nd, 1987.
does anyone have the information on which of those documents were copied by Mr. Garner?
I have no idea what he copied. No idea what Garner copied.
Ms. Waters, are you satisfied at this point that there wasn't any sort of collusion on behalf of the Sheriff's Department, or some sort of effort to conceal information, or do you think there still might be?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, and I can't even speculate about that. I just don't know what has happened here, except for what the Sheriff Block tells me has happened. We do know that Mr. Garner, who was one of his deputies, who was a problem, I guess, had some problems.
We're calling a federal prison for about 5 years.
Several years later.
That he did copy documents that he hoped to use in his defense. And we don't know what he copied. We don't know if what you destroyed was part of what he copied. We just don't know.
I have no idea what he copied.
Yeah.
Do you plan to push forward, Ms. Waters, with this probe?
Oh, yes, the investigation has been opened up, as you know, and I am doing everything that I can to be of assistance. When there's an opportunity to fulfill a request by any of you and others, I will attempt to do that. So I will do everything that I can to continue to leave no stone unturned.
Sheriff, were you saying that with the Lister property, there was some return given to his attorney? And if so, do you know
There
what?
was some property,
Yeah, some
yeah,
property.
ledger showed, in fact, the reports that
Can you
Congressman Waters has. All that was returned directly to the owner, what was returned to the attorneys.
But we have only the reports of one of the addresses And the other address is the one that everything was missing on.
Right.
Yeah.
They never,
We don't have a recording
they
yet.
never requested that, the return of that, so it went to the evidence. The property custodian, several months later, and then was disposed of a year later.
Sheriff Block, as you spoke earlier, as you began this thing, about the fact that there were rumors, there was misinformation. At this point in time right now, is the citizens of Los Angeles County, of course, will be listening to this this evening and this week. Can you tell the people of Los Angeles County that categorically that the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department had no knowledge of any CIA Contra drug connection and was not involved in any way, shape, or form?
Absolutely, unequivocal.
Okay,
Despite
thank you
the
very
fact
much, ladies and gentlemen.
Despite the fact that the deputies in the raid said that
Bill.
this guy identified himself as being affiliated with the CIA in 1986?
Well, just let me just say this, that if the DEA, as found in the affidavit, had been investigating them over a 3-year period of time, I would really find it just unconscionable that they would not have shared that information with the Sheriff's Department. The drug agents of the United States of America, who knows that these guys are cocaine dealers and they're trying to nail them, if they engaged the Sheriff's Department in this search warrant effort without giving them the background, I would be angry with them.
They didn't engage us. We were engaged because this information originally came to the Bell Police Department. The Bell Police Department indicated that they did not have adequate resources to pursue this investigation because of the allegation that these people were major dealers and that there may be a tie to the Contras.
Oh, well.
So we assumed that from the Bell Police Department.
Okay.
But as the investigation developed,
Yes.
we learned that the DEA and the FBI had informants, and they were working on the same organization. We only were there very briefly. Shortly after we received the information, we developed the affidavit and got the search warrants. We weren't involved for 3 years.
No, I know you weren't, but what I was saying was the question really had to do with how much information did you have at that time. And what I guess all I'm saying is that with the long-term involvement of the DEA and the fact that the DEA were on the raids, they had representatives with your sheriffs, if they didn't share with you the information about the Contra connection, then I think that's bad on their part. They should have done that.
They confirmed the Contra connection. That's what I'm saying. They said that their informants had been giving them the same information about the Contra connection.
Oh, I see.
In fact, the FBI was aware of the alleged Contra connection. The DEA had information about the alleged Contra connection, so we were all on the same wavelength.
I see. Okay.
As far as the Contras are concerned.
Okay.
The CIA is the issue that never came up.
Except for what Mr. Lister said.
Except his statement that,
Do you know if anybody checked with Langley for the name that appears in the police report of Mr. Weekly?
yes, the FBI did.
Do you know what they found out?
Found out that they didn't know any of those names except one, who they said was a cocaine dealer, so I don't know which one that was.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, this went to Brandon, this is a council.
That's Brando.
Okay, this is the Legardo
Just the
address.
Legato address.
Okay, to the property custodian
Okay.
on February 5th, 1987. And that's the officer who released it to the property custodian.
Oh, he released it to the property custodian, Mr.
custodian.
Legato. So then it's in storage at that point, is that right?
Right, but
Okay.
it goes to here.
And then
Goes
after
down to the warehouse.
goes to the warehouse?
And this is the same items.
I see.
Okay. And this went to department use, this went to department use, this went to department use, this went.
What we have to do is...
DNV means destroyed, no value.
destroyed, no value. This went to the crime
Now,
lab.
what appears to happen here is that the listing of the evidence is not as detailed as the evidence that is taken in. So what I need to do
Well,
is
what
I
do you
need to
mean it's not
match
as
it up.
detailed?
Well, what I have to do is I have to take each one of these items to see if it matches
Yeah, you can see
over
it.
here.
You can see it right there. It's pretty clear. One intake monitor, or 3 intake monitors. 1, 2, 3. 1 video camera. It's an intake camera. Box, military training field, envelope, military training films. 5 large checkbooks. See, when it goes there, it goes as miscellaneous papers once it goes to the...
Yeah, well, that's what I'm
to the
saying, and
evidence.
it does not match.
Yeah,
The
well,
detail
they-
does not match.
Well, they go as miscellaneous papers when they go down to the
I see.
evidence for
I see.
destruction.
I see.
That's of no value
why
to
would
the case that's being investigated.
It's of no value to, it's no value. In other words, it has no monetary value. So it's not auctioned off, it's not of any use to the department, so...
To the courts?
So it's destroyed.
Isn't-
The case is over.
That's what I mean.
There was no case.
But it could be of value to some other phase of the investigation, if there were one.
Well,
or the need
This
to.
is over a year later.
So both the FBI investigation was closed at that point, or?
There was no
Well,
investigation.
what we don't know is whether or not
There was
the
no
DEA,
investigation.
who's now been investigating them for 3 years, whether or not they looked at this information, whether this information was
They-
given to them
They
or
got
anything.
They got copies of everything we had. I mean, Xerox copies of all paperwork we had.
Why would you think that military training films were irrelevant?
Well, who are they of value to? I mean, if nobody claimed them, who are they of value
But
to?
if
They're
you
no-
knew
they're no
that there
value
was
to-
a, if
they're no
there,
value to us.
if there was discussion and the DEA was telling you that these guys were connected to the Contras and maybe selling dope to fund the Contras, and you see military training films of training for the FDN, that may be of some value. Maybe.
This means monetary value. After a case is closed, if something has no monetary value,
I see.
then it's destroyed. If
All
it's
right.
not usable by anyone.
Okay.
Thank you,
I think the sheriff has been very cooperative, and I want to thank you very
Okay.
much. I really appreciate it.
No,
Okay.
believe me,
Thank
when it
you.
comes to drugs,
Yeah.
I
Thank you. Thank you.
cover for anybody.